So we are going to indeed talk about the Sexual Key NLP book. I will just make a brief overview. It is a book that was published, I don't even know when, but by somebody who had heavily studied speed, seduction, all the things from Ralph Jeffries, and who assembled a kind of model to use hypnotic language in the context of dating. But many of the things he was talking about could also be applied in many other situations whenever you want to use conversational hypnosis. So the formatting, as you can see, is pretty raw. It's not really shown with clear graphs except for a few moments. That's why many people get confused about this book, even though it is a great one. I definitely learned a lot from it. But outside of the basic hypnotic techniques, he was giving a lot of details that could be applied in sales, in dating, in whenever you want to convince somebody by using their emotions and explaining that whenever you talk with a woman, especially if you want to date her, many of the things guys are used to say that are heavily logical don't hit as much as if they were speaking with more emotions. So that is the purpose of the book. And I've got Joe here, who is going to explain what he wanted to learn from this book and how I will do my best to answer those questions. And I hope that that will be helpful too for anyone who wants to learn more about it. So Joe, welcome here. I'm glad to have you here.
Welcome.
And you can proceed with any questions you have about this book.
Okay, so my first question is
Yeah.
like if if a complete beginner starts reading the book, he doesn't have any prior knowledge in NLP and covert hypnosis, and he's struggling with the language patterns, but that's not sufficient for a beginner. I mean, beginners can't understand that formula.
Oh,
But
yeah. Okay, I see. Yeah.
exactly, that's it.
Okay. Oh,
So if you could devise or create a simple structured formula summarizing the underlying structure instead of just go to scripts, what would it be like? Embedded command plus visual anchoring?
Basically, the way I would simplify that technique is first of all by reminding what are his initial principles between bubble words and the sense words. Bubble words, what he calls bubble words, or anything that is belonging initially to the Milton model, therefore vague language, vague enough so that anyone can put their definition on it. So if I talk about love, about feeling a connection, about having an urge to do something, an urge, those terms are pretty vague, or like feeling confidence. They are really vague, and they usually make people go into a slight trance because they need to get their own emotional experiences to figure out what you're talking about. Then on the reverse, the sense words, the really specific descriptions, like what you are, the brightness of the colors you are going to see, all the heaviness in your chest that is going to pump faster as your blood pressure escalates once you find that person you like. All those descriptions are heavily specific. Whenever he gives those descriptions of X equals Y or X leads to Y, he's just inserting, connecting together various bubble words and sense words together. It is just about getting your brain used to always describe the same thing, but with many more adjectives and adverbs and bubble words, vague terminologies, so that the person get immersed more fully into your description rather than just saying when you feel good. That doesn't mean much, but when you start having an impression of the connection between you and the person you are talking to, because they have a smooth way of talking, and the smoother they talk, the more easily you fall into a feeling of having known that person forever, and that feeling gets spread into your whole body. Okay, now you're escalating into more and more descriptions, words. So the basic formula would just be, what is a state? And by this, we can replace by embedded command. What is a state you would like them to experience? That would be what he calls X, or bubble word. What is a state you want them to experience? Connection, feeling fascination, absorbed, being absorbed by the person you're talking to. You get a state, and then you figure out how many descriptions sensory descriptions could you find to explain what this state is like? By sensory descriptions, we mean visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Visual, what do you see? Auditory, what do they say and on which tonality do they say it? And what kind of feelings do their voice tonality make you experience? That is one of the basic ways that I would explain that. And before continuing with this review, I wanted to let you know that I have published recently a small document with the best language patterns I have ever used to seduce women I liked, and those patterns are from my experience what works the best, or among the ones that work the best, to create an emotional connection from start to finish, and later, if she really likes you, a sexual connection in the same way. Those patterns are down below if you want to check them out, be my guest, and with that in mind, let's proceed with the rest of this review.
Can you summarize it in parts of speech and example above it? Like adverb or state plus other parts of speech, and give example above it, templates.
Describing an experience she would have, so during a date, that would be the simplest way I have of explaining how it works. You make her, you describe something she would experience. So, for example, a feeling of connection. Okay, let's start with that. Just a feeling of connection, an emotional connection. That is the bubble word. Emotional connection is the bubble word. Then the whole sentence would be when you experience bubble word, so when you experience a feeling of connection, I think what happens is, so I just insert my own interpretation, I think what happens is that, and then you give all the sensory descriptions. So for example, when you experience a feeling of connection, I think what happens deep down inside is that you get your heart somehow melting because it feels like you can drop down all the barriers as you look at the face of that person, because somehow their eyes tend to make you remember very positive memories from your past. And those memories may get brighter and bigger as you look at that person. I could go on, but basically here I use the bubble word, emotional connection. When you experience bubble word, I think what happens is, and then I gave this sensory descriptions. Here I gave kinesthetic and visual, because I described what happens in the body, kinesthetic, and I linked that with visual, when you see his face and remember memories positive from your past. I guess that is a bit more simplified than my previous explanation.
Okay, that's fine. So are you ready for the next question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so next question is, if you had to start all over again in the seduction field and you only had sexual key materials, how will you apply the escape principles or practice in your daily life with women or girls, etc.? Question.
Pretty good question. So I've got only this book and I didn't have any experience yet, or like
Yeah.
very big. Oof, wow, that is a big one. Because I'm in that case, the biggest component is definitely the number of trials and the number of attempts you make on different goals. So just having one to practice with is not going to be enough in that case.
Yeah,
You need to,
I said women or girls.
yeah, so both of them. You will need a huge area of practice for with as many people as possible. That is the beginning point. Where could you find enough people to practice with? The good news, though, by 2025, is that we have dating apps and that many people can use them whenever they want to practice their skills with more time to think, because they can think about what to write on the app before answering to the woman directly, whereas if she's in front of them directly, that might be more pressure. So maybe if I was a complete beginner, I would maybe start more with dating apps for practicing my conversational skills. That might be less intimidating. And eventually with AI, by now, I guess there are applications, but I would stay in the beginning with real human beings, because AI has its own downfalls. And the goal would not even be specifically to get her on a date or anything. It's just for practicing. The first big mindset to insert in your head is I do that to perfect my skills more than to get the result. Because every time people fail at this, it is mostly because they put the result first and they ignore the process, or they don't even like the process. The whole concept of practicing hypnotic language is to figure out a way of communicating that you enjoy using. Not something you have to force yourself to do, because otherwise that would just get boring, and the first failure will make you quit if you don't enjoy using the process. So the sexual key book is one way of communicating. There are many others. Go with the one you like the most. It can be this one or any other. Just find one you enjoy practicing, because you may even have some pride of, oh, I just used 3 bubble words in that sentence. I'm proud of myself. Get some gratification for the little test and the little attempts you make whenever you are discussing with a woman you might date. So starting by dating apps, and the biggest way to use those, to develop those skills, I would say, is by being bold with it and getting in your mind the presupposition that you and her would are going to get together, or like what would you say if you had the assertiveness you were going to end up together, even if I know I just said don't presuppose you have to get this one, so there is some freedom of the outcome to develop, and that is more a self-hypnosis thing to really unload the potential pressure of having to get this one. But the concept would be to use your language with the intention of trigger in herself the desire to meet you. For that to happen, what kind of feelings would she need to experience as she's communicating with you? Most people just don't communicate with any intent. They just randomly respond to what they're hearing at the specific moment. If before replying you have an intention in mind, I know what state I want to lead her into. I want to get her to have fun. That might be a great one to start with if you don't know her, she doesn't know you. Figuring out what kind of state would she have to be into. That might be having fun. That might be being curious. Maybe the more curious she is about you, the more easily she will want to meet you. So curiosity, having fun, laughing, those ones I think are great ones to start with. And then more deeply, feeling emotionally connected, or a sense of feeling of love. But those ones might be a bit more too early if you don't know her at all. So starting with the state in mind, and then once you have the state in mind, then looking into the sexual key book or anything, what kind of phrases would I see myself using? Because some of the phrases are pretty weird and intricate. You don't need to use any of the very complex stuff Fuentes is talking about. Maybe just get 10 to 15 phrases that you think are pretty clever in the way the wording is being made, and write them down. And then during the conversations, the goal is to insert as many of those phrases as possible, and always adapting them based on her response. That way you develop the habit of adapting with the feedback mechanism. You don't just rehearse what's in your own head, you adapt what's in your own head with the reaction you are getting. So if she's just confused and doesn't understand anything, then you reduce your sentences, you make them shorter, you just make a small joke. If she is getting hooked by what you said, like, oh yeah, definitely I have experienced that before, then you make her elaborate. Oh, what happened? Who were you with? The whole point is to get more into her inner world and to make her dive into her inner world. So I guess that is a basic explanation of how I would do it in the beginning, and then many more steps, but that might be already a pretty good one to start with.
Okay,
and as a reminder, you still have accessible down below the 5 best language patterns I have ever developed to seduce the kind of woman I wanted or the kind of woman I liked, so that I was minimizing the risk of rejection and enhancing the possibility of her and I connecting in an honest way, in a legitimate way, and in a way that she will enjoy. That is down below if you want to discover what they are right now. And with that in mind, let's proceed with the final part of this review.
This question is the third question. third question to be specific. So what is wrong with this model? Does it work in real life?
I saw it, but can you name me the page again?
So that's the open to close model
Mhm.
from day game to for day game.
I to me it is still pretty good. I think it is pretty valid. Um, the one problem I might see, not with the model itself, but with the those kinds of models, is when only when guys start to get too trapped into too many details. So if they have all of those steps in their mind, and they try to keep leading to the next one, to the next one, but maybe they didn't even cross the intrigue curiosity phase, and they try to go into sexual desire way too quickly before she actually got there. So with that in mind, I think there's not. I wouldn't say there's anything wrong. And if there is anything you think is wrong, of course you can tell me. But I don't think there is anything wrong by itself. I think the only yeah.
I can elaborate here. Like I've been almost to the finish line, and I did it in this sequence, and I understand that if you trigger arousal too quickly, she will eject in with the WTF face, with the blushed WT face, and she will leave because it doesn't make any sense to for this to happen. If you use the sexual arousal pattern right away or just focus in trick, you have to build trust, then connection, then the last steps as desired.
Okay. Oh, okay, then I see. That's unveiling one huge challenge, and it is even the topic of the book, because all of those words, they are for our bubble words that are extremely vague and that are not completely explained here. And even though they are explained below, they may not have the same signification for everyone. So what the author had in mind when he wrote down trust and comfort, maybe those are not exactly the definitions or the processes you had in mind when you read it and when you had this woman in front of you. So the first thing is that I guess by trust you had in mind more something like emotional connection, which is putting third. And maybe if what you're describing is the way it happened, maybe you thought you had crossed the connection phase, but you did not cross it, at least not in the way the author thought you would cross that phase. So in that case, can you remember what happened when you thought you had crossed the connection phase with her?
Well, I think my mistake was contextual rapport, but my connection wasn't sufficient. So I built very mild rapport, and she quickly left. And then we're like, hi, 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 and then she forgot me.
Oh, okay. So okay, I get it. So I guess the interaction you had was pretty short in total. I guess it didn't last for very long. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because I
Yeah.
was using very simple and generic stuff
Yeah.
like two, three bubble words max and few sense words.
Yeah. Because when I developed those skills, with the whole connection phase, um, I had like self-model my own process to complete that sequence. I was not even getting into deep connection before at least 30, 40 minutes down into the conversation. So presupposing you can get there in just 5 minutes, is it possible? Yes, depending on what stage she's in that day. Maybe she's just having a great time and she's pretty open, or maybe you are already the friend of a friend, therefore she kind of knows you already. In those cases, it is possible. But when I
Yeah.
just started, I was not getting at that phase of like deep connection before 30, 40 minutes down into the
Excuse me,
conversation.
is that for cold approach or for warm approach, like social circles or complete strangers?
Both. Like the
Both.
point the point is I was not really trying to build those things this whole sequence when I was just meeting her and I didn't know I had a guaranteed long time with her. If we are in the cold approach, I just met her, but I know that there is a way we can have a long conversation, then I know it is on and then I'm going to build all those states one at a time. If I know we don't have more than 5 minutes together, I'm not really trying to get into deep connections. I'm going to fish for what is a good opportunity to see her again and how can I make her want to meet me again. If we just have 5 minutes, it is probably not going to be beyond intrigue curiosity. What might she be curious about you so that she wants to see you again? Uh, because if you don't only have 5 minutes and it is cold approach, I highly doubt it is very seldom you can build a super deep connection, at least not in the way I guess the author here put it. The way I would you definitely do it is by first of all opening more about myself, not in talking about super long stories that happened to me, but introducing something personal about myself, which might just be like one phrase or two phrases, but anything emotional like, oh, I thought, like, right, today I have my own business. When I started, I was definitely afraid it would not work. And that feeling of fear was pretty intense in me, and I was definitely not sure I would succeed in having a career. Do you experience anything like this yourself?
Yeah,
Now I
I'm
make her connect.
currently trying to build a business with coaching, but not LP coaching. I'm trying to fuse mm, physical improvement with NLP, like bust through your mental blocks for lifting, hitting the gym, and reading right your relationship with food.
And you see right now we are okay, I'm just going to remove that. So you see right now the way you respond is how most guys respond is by purely logical information. The fact I mentioned fear, being afraid, many women would engage with what I just said more with the feeling. Yeah, it must be so stressful, so scary to try to build
Oh,
something.
so you're referring to the emotional reactions and the feelings. Like most guys are, oh, I can do that. It's too scary. She'll reject me, and all those limiting belief cycling.
Kind of. So yeah, but you made a greatest example of how what gets most guys stuck with those conversations because they try to apply everything super logically because it is how we as guys tend to process information and discuss with each other. When it is with a woman, it will be much more effective if you focus more on the feelings she would experience and the feelings you have experienced as you were into the event itself. So if I talked about well, whatever right now, but if I talked about this, about something I was deeply scared about, then she would probably relate more easily with something she was scared about too, or maybe asking me questions about, but so do you feel relieved right now? Do you have, is it good right now? Do you feel it is going to be okay right now? She's many times more onto the feelings associated with the experience rather than on the how this experience happens, why logically does it should happen like this, like that. They usually don't care about this unless they are into work mode. If she's on her work environment and she has to figure out a problem, or if she is a business person herself, maybe she will just get into work head at
Yeah,
this
like
moment.
some masculine women who are
Yeah,
in their left brain, like too logical, to like some that are assuming the male role.
that might happen in that case, and even those ones might get down and chill out if you had a woman like this who's in heavy masculine mode. Also, it is just a question of which topic of conversation might make her get the work masculine mode off. And there's always at least one thing that you might talk about that she would get off the whole super logical, concrete problem solving thinking and get more into feelings. All of them have those processes in their head. Maybe some of them are less in tune with those, but they can always get there. And then it's obviously more also about how much does she know you and how much does she feel she can open up with you. But so the main way I would do it, yeah, is by describing something about me. That might be fear, that might be anything else, and maybe something super positive too. Whatever, just emphasizing more how do I feel or what did I experience during whatever event of my life, and questioning her, did you have anything like this in your life? One of the easiest topics is boyfriends, girlfriends. Oh, the first time I had somebody leaving me, a girlfriend leaving me. I was really heartbroken. It took me a while, and then I recovered. But I remember when I was heartbroken, it took me like 1 year, and I couldn't even gather up my thoughts anymore. I was too confused because I was lost every day thinking about her smile. I couldn't get off of those memories. Now she's definitely going to connect with something similar in herself that she lived or that some of her friends lived. So using more the feelings and then asking her about anything she has experienced that might be like this, and see what comes out. And then keep changing the topics of conversation. If the first one you use doesn't really connect anything with her, then use something else. Girlfriend, boyfriends, work, something with your family. Oh, I just saw my two nephews being born. It was such a great enjoyment to have the whole family gathered around those two babies that are just born right now. And I could see my cousin being so happy when she saw those babies being alive. Did you have anything like that in your life? Then we go on with something emotional, building up the emotional, and then seeing anything that appeals to an emotional connection with a man, or like, I mean, in her case, or a woman if it is in your case. So the whole topic of connection is getting her to reveal, if you can make her reveal something personal that she has lived, either positive or negative, that might be any of them, but something deeply emotional she might reveal about her. Once you get at that point where she indeed reveals to you something personal that she has lived, uh, in terms of connection, then you know that phase is really in, it's really crossed. And usually you see that mixed with a change in her behavior. She will probably talk slower or like have her eyes going down and like having a big sigh, like, oh, yeah,
Like
wow,
she's opening up. She's
exactly.
opening up, yeah, gradually.
Yeah. So I guess that is
So
summing up the question. Yeah.
yeah, and next question, we have the fourth question. How to fractionate between bubble words, vague language, and specific language sense words?
I think it is going back to the first question. It is always the always X, Y, X, Y, X being the bubble words here and Y
Yeah,
being the sense words. I think, yeah, let me answer with one exercise that is not about this, but that can be used for this. The exercise was, when you're driving outside somewhere, you just get used to, even out loud, if you're by yourself, describing everything you see around you and describing with as many details as possible everything you see around you. So right now I just see my wall around me and I see my laptop and I see on the color of the wall it is kind of a light color. There's not many shadows, a few shadows. And when I look at the screen right now, I can see Joe and I can see myself and I can see my movements with my hands. And then I see my books on the side and I see some blue and I see some yellow and I see the book I wrote myself, because when I wrote the book myself, okay, I get in the habit of describing literally everything I see around me with as many details as possible. Colors, shapes, lightness, everything. That is an exercise that was advised in the pickup community to get guys to get out of their head and outside to focus more on what is outside. Because once they focus more on the girl they have in front of them, then it gets easier to connect with her. Well, you can link that with bubble words and sense words because you can get used to go on for as long as possible. The way I would do that is by using some of the descriptions Fuentes makes, some of the list that he gives of sense words and bubble words. I can see the pages. I know on some pages he's got lists like that of all the words possible to say.
like a laundry list.
Yeah, that's not exactly. You just have those lists, you copy paste those lists somewhere, and then you train yourself to speak either out loud or either by writing down for as long as possible, uninterrupted, by using as many as possible words of those lists into it. You had a question about it?
Yeah, like give an example. When I started first reading this book, the book we're discussing right now, and I was trying to deconstruct the linguistic structure
Mm-hmm.
and like make it a visual, a graph, how to make a basic language pattern with like 2 to 3 bubble words
Hmm.
and gradually ramp up the speed of the language pattern, like adding more gradual, like trying out first two, two to three components of bubble words on real world women without the goal of sleeping with her or even a date, just to see what happens.
Did that and did it work or not really?
Well, to some degree, but I write field reports and I see some of my mistakes, filter them out. Like, you know, Richard Bandler says there's no mistakes, there's only feedback.
Yeah.
And like I'm like going too fast for the sexual excretion,
Okay.
like being
Get it.
clingy, especially at the beginning when you're, you know, when I was 21 or even 18 years old, and you know the hormones are rushing, and you're like a horny stag.
Yeah, I get it. The thing is, the whole exercise in itself I just described is made to be done by yourself to train your mind to not run out of things to say, even including the language he is giving. Then obviously, when you are in front of somebody and you have to adapt to how she's responding, then definitely, as you described, using the TOTE model, or more simply for those who don't know, always adapting based on her response. And for that to happen, what my best advice is to use questions to allow her to connect with her own experience. So in the beginning, yes, the exercise would be to describe for as long as possible using bubble words, always thinking about what else can be connected to this. So if I use words, again, from the list given by Fuentes, words like when you feel that connection and it builds up inside yourself because you can remember how it felt inside to fall in love with the first person you ever fell in love, and it felt like a warm light warming up your chest as it was opening your heart with all of those rejuvenating memories with him, then you could go on and feeling a strong connection to that person as if you had known him forever. Okay, that is how I would do that by myself. Next, if I have to say something like this in front of her, obviously I'm not going to deliver that whole thing in one block. I'm going to use maybe the first few words. So, I was reflecting about what it feels to have a strong emotional connection with somebody. I'm not sure if everyone is experiencing that in the same way. I think for me, it feels like when my heart is kind of opening in my chest, I feel an opening. It feels really warm. And some people said it was not the case for them. Can you figure out of curiosity, how it happens for you when you have an emotional connection with somebody? Then I
Well,
pose. Then yeah. Yeah, you can.
Uh, yeah, so basically it's very similar, but I feel like I'm flying
What do you mean flying?
kinesthetically, like out of body experience.
Okay. That would be the way you would respond to what I just said?
Yeah,
You're the woman. You need to expand, Joe. So, fly, what does that feel like? How does flying feel like?
flying feels like you're in very heightened state of awareness, like altered states of consciousness, where you start traveling to alternative dimensions.
Good on the bubble words. I think you can add more on the sense words. Flying. What does a bird feels when he is or she is when it is flying in the sky? What the feeling of, I'm not sure in English the term, but um, when you are in space and you have those machines, you don't have gravity anymore. When you're flying, like the gravity is being reversed, and I feel like
Or
all my
base,
cells are getting
yeah,
above the ceiling.
yeah. So basically, I feel like I'm euphoric, I'm happy, it's transcendence.
Good.
Like by now, three bubble words, I guess.
Yeah, it's good. The first one you said was happy, ecstatic. You said ecstatic, right?
and transcendence, like you're ascending from
Ascending.
your physical body. Like when somebody goes in a coma and his soul goes and third party view. Like you
Good.
see yourself from a third party, your physical body. Like there's those near death experiences you see on television
Okay.
channels.
That's a good metaphor to explain. Maybe not in a dating context, because if it is about feeling love, maybe don't mention being almost dead and on in a coma. But I guess, but that is a good analogy by itself to describe the thing. Pretty good. So, well, I guess one good exercise in that case could be you take all of the bubble words you might say about anything, just the ones you could see yourself using in a conversation. You draw, like you write down somewhere, you draw three arrows. And the first one is visual, the second one is auditory, the third one is kinesthetic. For each bubble word, like love, okay, visually, how do you know you experience love? Auditory, what kind of things do you hear when you experience love? Kinesthetic, what kind of things do you feel when you are in the feeling of experiencing love? And then you add as many adjectives and adverbs as possible, which is another huge part of Fuentes' book, adjectives and adverbs. If the feeling of love is visually extremely bright, it's like a bright light, very bright light. Okay, what adjectives can we add to a bright light? It is rejuvenating bright light. It is an elevating bright light. It is a reassuring bright light. How
It's
many more? Yeah.
can you use sense words? So like it's a silky bright light.
It's a what?
Silk from silk.
Yeah, exact. Perfect. That's a perfect one. It feels like silk. It feels like soft silk on my body when I feel that.
Like
Awesome.
silk blanket.
Yeah. It's like I am
Blanket,
so
not shirt.
It's like I am so comfortable I feel so soothed in a silk blanket in a room I feel secure into.
Like the room from your childhood, from your childhood years, like
Perfect.
from 7 to 12. Yeah, 12, right.
Awesome. And there you have it. Connect to as many experiences you've had in your life, so that she can get a better image and a better and a more descriptive feeling of what it feels like for her. The whole concept of Fuentes is to keep alternating between bubble words and sense words, going back and forth. And obviously, if you notice, there is one she reacts more to, like, oh yeah, in your childhood, like oh yeah, you had that too. Then you expand on that. What else in your
Like
childhood
where
happened?
where like the peak points or potent points.
The peak points?
Peak like prime or potent. Where's the biggest emotional reaction or intense
Yeah,
emotional
exactly,
reaction?
exactly. Yeah, the peak. Yeah, I get the point. Okay, definitely. Yeah, I think that sums it for this question. Writing erotic poetry. Yeah, definitely. That would be a great one too. Uh,
So
you want any more? Yeah, more on this one, and when you want, you can go to the next question.
and so most even like what do you think about literotic or erotic poems or novels? Should you read them to enrich your pattern recognition and develop your own patterns based on them?
That can be a good idea. However, two things. First of all, I would only do it if you at least kind of like reading them, even just from a cognitive research standpoint. Maybe you just read them because you want to figure out how language works, which is fine. But as I said in the beginning, don't try to use a method for learning you feel is deadly boring or that you don't like using at all. So using poetry and reading erotic poetry or the kind of novels women read, yes, if you have some stimulation by eventually studying how their emotions work, and can you decode with some NLP model, okay, this is where the sense word is going, this is how the adjective is being used. Or if you just enjoy reading it for the sake of it, why not? Just don't try to read that. If it is only to get somebody into your bed, then I would not advise it in that case. And the second thing is only read them to the extent where you are going to write down an example of yours, right? Even just a 2, 3 sentences, doesn't need to be like a long 5 pages, just something where you use what you have read as an input in your head, and then you use that input to attempt at least to create your own. That will train your mind to think more with those words and to install them in a conversation when you will need them.
Okay, so probably the last question or pre-last question is, if you could design a game model like a Seduction GPS model, a map, your own map, or how to create your own map from open to close, like opening beginner phrase and like under a compliance letter.
Always start by where you're getting stuck and what would be, and with the final outcome in mind. You have your present situation, where are you right now? Usually when you talk with a woman, what does happen in the conversation with her, and what is the final outcome? Describe with the sense words what would be the final outcome. Don't just say, I want her to like me. That's not an outcome. An outcome is much more descriptive of what she would experience and how would it feel like and be like. When you have the final outcome and you have what's happening in the present state, you, as you said, stuck points, you explain exactly what is the stuck point and what would it look like to have a phase that would unlock this stuck point. If there is a point where you just get stuck because you don't know what to say, because she's saying something and it confuses you, whatever, okay, what kind of phase could you call it to introduce something, to develop something that would get past that stuck point? If you had already gotten past this stuck point, what would you have developed big as a result of it? And that is the phase that will constitute later your own model. Then if you get a lot more experience, probably those phases will change, because in the beginning you might need like 15 phases. When you get more experience, you may just have 3 phases in your head because many things will have been automated and have become unconscious. So start with all the sticking points you have. Only focus on where you get stuck and elaborate on what would it look like if I could get past, what kind of tool, strategy, or method could I use, could I develop to get past this sticking point? And that would be one of the phases of your model.
Okay, so I'm writing on a chat the last question, and that will be the final question because I'm out of questions, at least for now.
Okay, no problem.
Like, give an example of 5 cheat codes for a
Hmm.
beginner, for intermediate, for advanced, for a master, like
Hmm.
the whole structure level, the whole hierarchy, the pyramid.
The outcome of those cheat codes is what? If you had to give just one sentence to explain what is the purpose, the outcome to be achieved
Give
by
you an example. Give you an example. If patterns are designed to lead her mind to an emotional outcome like happiness, tranquility, elicit emotions in her past bank. Like if the past is a bank of experiences,
Okay,
if you use that analogy, at least to the healthy women who are not damaged mentally or physically.
sure.
And you could push her emotional buttons like each pattern is an emotion. If you can devise each pattern for an emotion, for a feeling, for a sense, that's the cheat code for emotions. The cheat code for emotion. That's one cheat code. Then the next
Mm-hmm.
cheat code is
Okay.
pre-framing, like establish an initial frame that you're the price and so on and so forth. That's for advanced players who already established it through years of experiences.
Hmm.
They're the prize. Women are the prize. Uh, they are the prize women seek after the players.
Mm. So
So
I will just get back a document I had wrote somewhere where I had something about this. But yeah, the my own process, what I had unveiled as the four most important aspects of seduction. The first one was not directly about communication, but I will give you the four and then I can expand on communication in itself. The first one to me was to develop an environment where you have as many contacts as possible with women of all sorts. Uh, Even better if those are that you want to date. So figuring out a means to surround yourself much more with women around you on a regular basis, developing more conversation with them. That was my first pillar. The second pillar was, as you said, integrating the beliefs of the prize of how many times do you evaluate a conversation as if you had to win something out of her, whereas she should have to win something out of you if you consider yourself as a prize. The third pillar I can develop after on the pricing aspect, of course. The third pillar was to devote more energy and attention in your life to your own personal projects so that you have more things to talk about that are stimulating about what you're building passionately in your life so that she will be more inclined to want to join your world instead of just you being a nobody who tries to get into her bed. And the last phase, well, the last pillar was practice any activity that pushes your limits. That can be called approaching, that a pretty huge one that pushes guys' limits. That can be lifting weights, that can be boxing, that can be anything where your limits, physical, emotional, mental, whatever, are being challenged so that you develop more testosterone and get more of that attitude of going after what you want. Those were my four pillars, and I can expand on those. I guess you would want more explanation on the pricing, or if you have any other pillar like this in your head, which one would you want me to describe with cheat codes?
So, like the pillar, I'm the center of the universe, the narcissistic pillar. I'm the center of the universe, and women gravitate like me. Like
Yeah.
in astrology, there are planets or stars that gravitate around something naturally, and women are naturally drawn to me.
Mm. That comes down to me much more to self-worth beliefs. How many positive things are there legitimately about yourself, and how can you describe them more eloquently or with more positive descriptions? The
Like
beginning, yeah.
positive assumptions each time you interact with some women.
Yeah, what I think Ross Jeffries had a whole methodology about this. That might be the starting point for anything else in dating with NLP. It is to unveil the mental strategies that are running through your mind as you are approaching her or as you are discussing with any woman you like. What kind of mental strategies are passing through your mind? And by this, we mean, again, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. When you are about to approach her, what kind of sounds or phrases or thoughts are going through your mind? Do you think, I hope she's going to like me? Do you think, what if her friends don't like me? Do you think, how can I get her into bed? Which is obviously way too quick if you don't know her. Yeah, self-reflect. What kind of things are going through your mind? If there is a fear of failure, then how does that happen? Is it because you tell yourself something? Is it because you make an image of her rejecting you? Is it because you get just a paralysis in your throat and it's like heavily kinesthetic? What's the code? You meant cheat codes. Then what is the code before going into a cheat code to unlock that? Before that, what was the code that built that fear of failure? What was the code, the internal code that created that? Was it an image? Was it a phrase you told yourself? Was it something a woman told you one day? Maybe someday you have been rejected and it's still stuck in your mind, like a resonating voice, paralyzing your thoughts and not knowing what to say. Um, Whatever she's, what, yeah, Many guys also have the potential objections, she would say, as a
Yeah.
response, as a result of them approaching. And many times she did not even say anything yet, but they are presupposing she will say no, or that she will have objections, or that she will reject. The greatest exercise I knew that I did for quite a lot of time with this, and it's a pretty great exercise because it doesn't even involve saying anything. It is just you walk in the streets or anywhere where there are women you might want to engage with. You just walk past them and you do that in 3 times. The first time you just walk past them and you write down, just after you passed, what kind of thoughts got triggered in your head. As you said on the chat, she's going to say, I have a boyfriend. Okay, that's one thought. Perfect. We don't judge that thought for now. We just elaborate on what's happening in our internal code. I just passed that woman. I thought she was going to tell me I have a boyfriend. Okay, you note that down. You walk again, you get past a few others. What kind of thoughts got into your head? Oh, I wanted to approach that one. Oh, I had thought in my head, she's kind of in a bad mood. She's going to tell me I don't have time. Okay, that's another thought. I write down I don't have time. Once you have a whole list like this of all the objections you have in your mind, or all the negative thoughts you make up in your mind, then the second phase is to translate all of those. Also, you have that one from here. You translate all of those by what is the positive reframed counter opposite. So, if she said, if in your mind she would say, I have a boyfriend, what would be the positive counter opposite? For example, it might be, well, I'm free tonight. Doesn't mean anything will happen between the two of you, but at least she's got free time tonight. And if she says, I've got free time tonight, she probably doesn't have a boyfriend, or if she does, maybe it's not going that well. So in any case, good for you. If you had the thought of she's going to be in a bad mood because she just got off work, what is the perfect counter opposite? Well, she's telling me that she's having a great day and she's happy to meet me. Good. So then you do the same thing again. You walk past other women you might find somewhere else in a busy street in your town, whatever, and then you rehearse all of those positive counter opposites whenever you cross one you like, or even whenever you cross any of them. You just get into the mental habit of picturing them saying all the perfect positive counter opposites to your initial objections. And you associate the image of the woman you are walking past during the day with those positive expectations that may or may not be real, but the negative ones are not real either. So in the end, it's just about how you preconceive what's going to happen. And then the last phase, once you have done that, first of all, you elaborate, okay, what happened in my head when I did that? Did I think it was real? Did I have any other subsequent objections rising up? In that case, same thing. You just write down the subsequent objections and you reframe them. And then the last, final, third phase is to amplify in an absurd way. She's not just going to have a positive response, she's going to have an outrageous, absurd, immense response. Like she's jumping on me, she's hugging me because she loves the way I just approached. Something absurd like this that will most likely not happen, but you amplify. You amplify the initial positive response you had in mind. You make it 10 times bigger, or at least like twice bigger in terms of positive effects than what was your initial expectation of a positive outcome with her. And same thing, you go past all of the next women in your town and you rehearse those incredible positive scenarios that could happen with her in the best case scenario. And from there, you notice how does your behavior changes. When you rehearse such positive outcomes, maybe you are going to walk with a more open posture. Maybe you are going to make better eye contact with a friendly smile and a relaxed face. And when you get used to walking in that state, rehearsing those things in your head as you walk past the woman you would like to approach, sometimes maybe somebody's going to approach you just because you look more open, more open. It happened to me when I was practicing that somebody just randomly comes to me, not a woman to date me or anything, but people come to me and want and just ask for something about the, can I ask you where is this in town? Where is that? But with a really friendly attitude. And I hadn't that happen in the last 6 months. So curiously, it happens when I am more open in my head. That is the whole exercise to reframe those thoughts and ground them into reality by walking past other women and training your mind to rehearse more positive expectations for what might happen with her, if that can
Okay,
help.
so that's it. And my last idea was modeling the masters, like having role models to learn from directly and indirectly by using your product NLP modeling secrets, the DTI track. Like you see somebody successful with women in the field, and you start the DTI track.
That,
Like in
yeah,
Yeah, definitely that's a shortcut, right?
that can definitely work. The whole thing with the DTI and the modeling is just to, same thing with the feedback, to keep alternating between mental work and trying something in real life. Doesn't need to be something super complex or super challenging, just getting experience, one experience,
Like
mental
small
work.
steps.
Yeah, small steps and specifically alternating because if it is just action all the time, I saw that back in the day in the pickup community. Some guys kept approaching, but they kept doing exactly the same mistakes all the time, and they were never reflecting upon themselves. On the other side, you had the ones who were just into heavy mindset things, meditations, projecting a strong aura and the spiritual thing, but they were never approaching anyone. So in the end, didn't really work. The best compromise, I guess, is to alternate. Sometimes you do for one mental work like a meditation, like a DTI, like a modeling, hypnosis, whatever. Then you go, like maybe one day later, you go and test something. And you notice, did anything change? Is there any reaction I don't have anymore? That I used to be stressed and I'm kind of less stressed, maybe still a bit, but a bit less. Then you go back into doing some modeling trance or whatever, or some other NLP procedure, and then you go back into yeah, building your character and see, alternating like this between mental work and physical test. I mean, a test in real life with somebody. With that, you can't fail unless you stop attempting. That is the best strategy ever to keep learning and building up your skill set.
Like the thing with I have like an idea is to make an action bar with all the techniques, your personal go-to tools, not your personal, mine personal, that I use like two to three techniques and try them out and gather experience data and refine them over the years and see results.
Exactly. That is a perfect way of doing it.
Like the one is like bubble words, sense words, and framing. The other thing is right after the approach, the real life approach, you write down on a notebook what you said, what she said, her body language, her cues, unconscious calibration language, or
Mm,
whatever, and you'll gather a lot of data. And eventually, if you course correct or adapt, you
mm.
will get there one day, maybe after a year.
Exactly.
Who knows? Everybody is different and has a different starting point.
Oh, and another one in that same realm that I thought about recently, because I need to do that with my business. I'm not doing it right now. I should. I'm going to start doing it pretty soon. Is writing down every week what have you attempted or which actions did you take this week? And an action might not even be something in the like physical. If you just listen to a hypnotic trance, then it is an action. It is something you have done with the purpose of improving yourself in that field. Every week you write down the actions you took, and after like 2 months, you will very easily see the patterns of what are you doing wrong. That's going to be very easy to figure out. And if there has been one thing you did that provided results, but you did not realize it at the moment, because you were busy with work, you had other things to think about. But having the map laid out of all the actions you took and remembering, okay, that day I hooked up with that woman and it went great. You can trace back what did you do the few days before that happened, or the week before. And with the whole thing laid out, it's going to be very easy to analyze what is the 20% I did during those last 2 months that really got results. And if I did not get results, it's pretty easy to see that during the last 3, 4 weeks, I did not do shit. I didn't do anything. It's just why I
Um,
didn't get results.
like in economics, when they evaluate which financial year was the best revenue and why it's the best revenue, the main core reasons factors, they reproduce the effects, reproduce the factors,
Mm, exactly. That's perfect.
internal and external, if they can.
That's exactly this. And you can always adapt and add new things and ask more specific questions then of, okay, where am I getting stuck? What is the one tool, the one solution I need to get rid of that problem? And with something like that,
Um,
it's easier to figure that out. Thanks a lot because it was great to have those questions and reminding me of all the things I don't practice anymore, but that have been so enjoyable for me when I develop those skills.
so that's I probably would make different mistakes and or similar, overlapping to some degree.
Hmm.
And it will be great to learn from some other people's mistakes. Like they have a Bulgarian proverb: "Stupid people learn from their own experience. Masters learn from the others' mistakes."
Okay, I see. Pretty great. Okay, thanks a lot.